On behalf of KeyBank, it is my privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, Aisha Glover, Vice President of Innovation at Audible. As you may know, Audible is a leading creator and provider of premium audio storytelling. What you may not know, it is an innovator for enacting positive change in the cities and countries where it operates. We are incredibly pleased to sponsor today's event because, like Audible, KeyBank is deeply committed to making an impact within the community it serves and creating opportunities to inspire lasting change. Just last month, KeyBank built upon its early fulfillment of its groundbreaking $16.5 billion commitment community benefits plan, announcing it will increase its commitment to $40 billion. The investments will continue to focus on economic access and equity for underserved communities and populations. So far, the bank has invested $284 million in the Central New York market, supporting small businesses and home lending in low to moderate income communities, affordable housing and community projects, as well as philanthropic efforts targeted towards education, workforce development, and safe, vital neighborhoods. We are dedicated to making a difference and planning a better tomorrow for our clients and our communities. Today, we are excited to hear more about Aisha's work at Audible through her leadership. The newly created Global Center for Urban Development is focused on expanding Audible's community and economic initiatives to support local job seekers and business owners. Aisha has more than 15 years of experience as a change agent for economic empowerment and social responsibility. She previously served as President and CEO of Newark Alliance and Invest Newark, where she oversaw innovative and community-focused economic development initiatives. Her efforts have helped position Newark as a major destination city, strengthening small business ecosystem, supporting a thriving entrepreneurial base and attracting corporations, investors, and developers. Following her initial remarks, Aisha will be joined by CenterState CEO President Rob Simpson for a discussion on how Central New York business community can learn from Audible's model of redefining what a company can mean beyond what it does. It is my pleasure to welcome Aisha Glover, but first, let's take a closer look at some of Audible's incredible work in Newark.
This is Audible.
Newark is a city with an amazing history.
Newark, crossroad of the world.
Newark was one of the richest cities in the world 100 years ago. It was an invention corridor. Edison had labs here. Newark was an innovation center. But from that point forward, it proceeded to fall into a level of deprivation.
Growing up here, you definitely noticed a lot of abandoned buildings, only like shells of what they used to be. But I think one of the biggest misconceptions would be that there's nothing here.
Wayne Nash came to see me, and he said, you know, that church has been dead for years, and it's actually got great bones. What if we renovated it and turned it into another facility, because we just keep growing jobs and we need more space?
What better way to demonstrate our commitment to the community than taking a jewel that had tarnished from years of decay, restoring, resurrecting this amazing space?
The cathedral has such a storied history. It really was a community center, a vibrant religious center, but also had a theater and also had a school attached.
The windows actually speak to some of the great inventions of social science and the humanities.
So it's just a really strong symbol for what's anchoring us on the north end.
The idea was, what would it mean to have a direct connection to invest in the city?
How do we make sure that corporate giving is not a charitable checkbox? How are we really, truly engaging with the city?
And it created all sorts of experiments and programs.
We're really involved with schools. We give every high school student here in Newark a Fire tablet and a free membership to Audible. Audible is committed to hiring members of the community to work here and really elevate their lives.
The interns who work here have to be kids from Newark.
I think the future of Newark and the future of Audible are very intertwined at this point, especially with the internship program. You're getting a lot of great minds pulled into here. And I think this is a place where a lot of people are listened to.
We started a venture fund called Newark Venture Partners, which was designed to plant more little Audibles that can grow large as we have.
The small businesses in and along the corridors are benefiting as well.
Every Wednesday, we give several hundred employees passes to go out and eat in restaurants around the city.
We'll pay our employees $500 a month to come move to Newark and be part of this renaissance.
So Newark is hands down a city for innovation.
Only 17 minutes from New York City.
Newark has dark fiber under its streets. The bandwidth is unbelievable and at very little cost.
The talent base that's here, the educational institutions.
If you want to get like young, talented students who are fresh out of college with new ideas, this is the best place to do it.
The streets are beginning to brim with life. There's apartments being built where there weren't. The downtown is coming back. There are other companies getting with the spirit of coming into Newark.
I envision buzz, the energy, inspiring, motivating.
We love being part of Newark's story.
Newark's open for business, so I would encourage anybody out there with a startup idea or the CEO of a company, give me a ring. It's been an amazing decade run, and it's really defined the company, and I often think of it as one of the best decisions we ever made of the many that's created our success.
Audible in Newark is definitely a great story that keeps getting better.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Great. Well, I'm going to jump right in, assuming that everyone can hear me well. It's a pleasure to be joining you all this afternoon. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Steve, and to all the attendees. I hope this is not the time you choose to zone out or take a bio break. Rob Simpson and CenterState CEO, just thank you for allowing me to participate today. You told me that you did your homework on me, so I'm going to guess that nothing I say will be surprising. Consider that a little bit of fair warning. But in all seriousness, there are people who are maybe a little bit more radical, a tad more progressive, and likely more disruptive than I am, though I absolutely do not consider myself to be neutral by any stretch of the imagination. I do believe in the power of consensus building. So I'd like to share with you a moment where I thought it would be a time for consensus and unity. It was April 29th, and I saw a video of a small group of police officers standing over the body of a Black man on the ground as they brutalized him. It was all caught on video. The world watched, and many were enraged. He wasn't resisting, he couldn't. We live in a country with due process. We are guaranteed innocence until guilt is proven. We are smarter and better than what we accuse other countries of. And that video ignited a fury in our country and led to what some people would call riots, but I would call a rebellion, and calls for systemic change. That video was the brutal beating of Rodney King, and the date was April 29th, 1992. I was in high school, and here we are 30 years later experiencing the same cycle of issues. So on this day, April 29th, I wanted to open with that because the reality of race in America is as real as it was in 1619, 1865, 1968, 1992, and yes, 2021. Martin Luther King once said, there is no time to engage. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Gradualism. Think of all the times we've heard we can't flip something on its head or that things take time. Things have taken time, and we have been chipping away at change and taking our daily collective doses of gradualism. But what I'm here to explore with you all today is the root of that gradualism. I've also done my homework. I know your board membership, your reach, your representation. I know that you are all smart, esteemed business leaders in your own right. Some of you actually reached out to me in advance of this. Many of you have went through the traditional and elite schools and trainings. You have turned businesses around, have introduced groundbreaking and innovative solutions into your firms, rescued failing programs or products, and more. You are resourceful. You surround yourselves with some of the best talent. And in short, you know that you have access to unlimited data and research that substantiates claims that values-based marketing and socially driven businesses are more impactful. Yes, you all know that what's good for society is in fact good for business. As business leaders, all of the research and evidence is right at your fingertips. The power of hiring locally and how it helps improve employee satisfaction and retention. The power of local procurement and local sourcing on job creation, the local economy, and higher wages. Indeed, there are mounds of evidence around the power of diverse teams, about worker-owned cooperatives outperforming their peers, about women-led companies outperforming those led by men, or the fact that women-led startups have a better ROI. We know the data. So either we're choosing to ignore it, we prefer to stay in our comfort zones, we're prioritizing self-preservation, or we're fearful of upsetting the status quo. If we were choosing anything other than equity, we are choosing not to maximize our profits. We are betting against our A game and are electing to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. A hire here or there, justifying a business decision with a feel-good charitable contribution that could very well just be transactional but not disruptive. That's why I chose to leave my career in nonprofit and begin to work for Audible, the world's leading producer of audiobooks and sound entertainment. Audible is headquartered in Newark, as you saw in the video, and is the city's fastest growing employer. As an outsider, I saw and heard firsthand the intentionality of their work from their founder and executive chairman, Don Katz, who you heard from. It is hard to go from working under Mayor Raz Baraka, who I share so much in common with and believe in his unapologetic vision for equitable development, to a corporation that is a subsidiary of Amazon, one of the largest companies in the entire world. But I knew Audible. I knew Don Katz decided to move to Newark in 2007 to be part of the city's renaissance, and their countless programs to make direct community investments and lead the way to creating a vibrant and equitable future for Newark. Notice I used direct community investments, not grants. We started Newark Venture Partners, as you heard, a $100 million venture capital fund, of which Audible contributed nearly $30 million to help grow tech and innovation in the city. We started Newark Working Kitchens, a COVID response program that kept dozens of businesses open since April 2020, retaining 200 jobs and subsidizing the preparation of nearly 1 million meals. We've dispersed $500 every single month to any employee who would move to the city of Newark because we knew that that would increase their local economic footprint. These are just a sampling of ways that we have intentionally helped accelerate the city's growth and fill the gap where public funding couldn't. It's not enough to be in a city as a business. It's critical that we think of how we are of a city. Otherwise, we will all be watching another video in another 30 years, feeling like something should be done to bring justice to the world. That something is in front of us right now. It is in our power to right-size so many of the social and economic inequities that exist in our country. Consider it a business decision, and it can be one amazing story. Thank you.
Aisha, thank you so much for joining us. That was great. It was really great. And right, we did do our homework. We knew what you were going to bring to our conversation today. And it's a conversation that our community knows that it needs. And I think if I have one experience in working with the business community here over the course of the last decade and a half, it's that we have businesses here who want to be a part of the solution, right? Who find ways to engage, who are reaching out to us, who are providing leadership. But I think one of the things that I love about the Audible story is how focused the company is, and how you've been able to transcend the natural gravity of things happening, as you said, gradually, right? Progress is always a little slower than we want. You guys seem to have cracked the code and do something different. Can you tell us a little bit about that? The secret to success?
Sure. Honestly, I think it's just being unafraid to be disruptive, right? Sometimes we're waiting for others to trailblaze, right? We have a people principle, and I am new to the company, so forgive me because I actually keep all of our people principles on my desk so I can remind myself. But we actually have a people principle that is articulate the possible and move fast. I'm actually looking at it. Move fast to make it real. We don't have to wait for others, right? That's not how the company started. And I think it just goes to, working for a company that's very much still startup minded and entrepreneurial, and really just being willing to jump in and not wait for others.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely sometimes it's human instinct, right? You want to be surrounded by other people. You don't necessarily want to be the one who goes first. I think one of the other things that we sometimes hear in terms of feedback is not every company is the size of Audible. Not every company has the resources, the human capital, the financial resources. What lessons, what experiences, particularly with working with many of the smaller businesses in Newark, do you have for how smaller businesses, family-owned businesses, retailers, and others can lean in and be a part of this work too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know that size matters. I do feel strongly that obviously medium and larger size businesses can have the greatest impact, but for smaller businesses, like really thinking about your supply chain, right? I think that's a huge one where oftentimes we're thinking of our local impact from a charitable kind of writing checks and how can we support, local efforts, or we're thinking about it from a local hiring perspective. But I think procurement and local sourcing represents a significant opportunity for smaller businesses, for sure. Also, I mean, this is not as relevant because most are not public, but thinking about board representation, but certainly at least thinking about your senior management representation and what that looks like and the impact that you're trying to have within the company are kind of smaller ways that you can chip away at really larger issues.
One of the things when you and I first had a chance to chat that I loved in listening to you sort of describe the efforts of Audible is, this focus on results and outcomes, right? It's all about the result and the outcome, not so much about what you do, what you say, what you think, what you feel, but what outcome you're able to drive. And I'd love for you to just make it real for our audience, right? In terms of the impact for the city of Newark, for its residents, and maybe as importantly, the impact that has had on Audible's success. Because I love what you said in your comments about how making values-based decisions and investments is good for the bottom line. And I think that's something people know, but it's always helpful to reinforce it.
Yeah, I think there are two stats that stand out for me, and one really just underscores our role as the fastest growing employer in the city of Newark. For a 4-year span between 2015 and 2019, Audible accounted for 11% of all jobs added in Newark. And that stands even though we have significant corporate representation, right? Prudential is headquartered here. We have Panasonic, we have Horizon, United Airlines has their hub here. We have major anchor institutions in eds and meds. In fact, we're the 5th largest college town on the East Coast, and folks don't always think of Newark as a college town, right? So this is not because we are the one entity in the city that just happens to be growing. This city itself is growing, and so I think for us, making sure that as we grow, we're thoughtful and intentional about the impact that we're having in the city itself. We, with Newark Venture Partners, the second stat that I love is, we've had over 50,000 companies from all over the world applying to join and be part of Newark Venture Partners, which is an accelerator and venture capital fund, right? So that demand is there and that interest is there. But we've had companies grow out of the accelerator, permanently planting their roots in the city and creating hundreds of jobs. So it isn't just this work feels good and, you know, it's a great story and we are a storytelling company. There are the metrics and the numbers to really back that up in a way that can demonstrate our economic and our social impact. And one stat that I probably don't share as openly and freely, but also underscores the same point is our corporate giving is pretty low. And that is because what we'd rather do is think about, so Newark Working Kitchens, for example, we've raised $11 million in a year, and nearly half of which Audible has kicked in. But we didn't write a check, right? So we're willing to finance disruptive interventions that have the impact that we want, but not necessarily from a traditional philanthropic perspective. So gave you kind of two great stats and then one that, you know, we keep our eye on too, but for different reasons.
I'm curious. I mean, I think everyone watching today can tell, right? The ambition, the aspiration, the energy that you bring to the work that you do. If there's one thing that you feel like limits your ability to drive impact, I mean, you personally, but also Audible, the Newark community at large, however you want to define it, there's one thing that you feel like holds you back, and maybe also holds back the goal of driving equitable outcomes. What do you think it is?
Great question. I think it's the reputation or the brand of the city that we've been chipping away at collectively, that all the city institutions and stakeholders are all in around. But I'm sure people had, you know, some thoughts and some misperceptions about, okay, well, Newark, yeah, it's great on paper, kind of your textbook definition of where you might want to relocate, but you know, I don't know, and for whatever reasons, right? And so, believe it or not, that does have an impact on development, on investment, on business attraction, right? And we do need that level of interest and investment in order for us to adequately really implement an equitable strategy, right? And so the Mayor Baraka, established an Equitable Growth Commission a few years ago, which I have the privilege of sitting on. And it isn't like we want to stall development because we're concerned about gentrification. It's how do we do this in a way that ensures that people that have been here for generations and that small businesses and entrepreneurs that are here have an opportunity. And then if we are attracting businesses, how do we ensure that we're being clear about what is different about Newark? Because we're trying to make sure that businesses that don't otherwise have access or that have been slipping through the cracks kind of have a safe space here. But that brand of the city and how we market it and position it has been a challenge. And I think, you know, one that we're all definitely willing to take on, especially as storytellers. But it also does impact our ability to really kind of get past that and get to the substance of all of the assets and all of the really amazing reasons why Newark is a destination.
All right, last question. You've got hundreds of business leaders here in Central New York as a captive audience. We have presidents of higher education institutions and hospitals, CEOs of businesses, small business owners. We have a diverse group. Parting words for this audience around how they can engage and how they should engage in order to drive the kinds of innovative outcomes that you guys have had success with in Newark.
Sure. So I think I hit on it a little in my opening remarks, but it's really that successful businesses need successful communities, right? And so you can't and we can't kind of be growing and successful when a city around us isn't growing at the same rate. And if we can demonstrate, and we have, that businesses can and do benefit from those types of investments, then, you know, let us be a model, let us be a resource. There's so many governing bodies and entities all over the country that could be a resource, but we're more than willing to do that, to show you that this is in your best interest, and what's best for communities can and definitely is best for business. So, you know, hate to sound too commercially and pitching the city or the company, but I think we've figured out what that sweet spot is, and that mix of here's how you can do well and do good at the same time.
I love the message. It's one I think that we have delivered time and time again. It's one that I know our business community understands. I think the fundamental thing, and it's a great segue into my remarks, it's about committing to doing more and doing it. Aisha, I want to thank you for joining us. You should know you have some hardcore Aisha Glover fans on our staff. If you were here with us in person, they'd be swarming you after the meeting at our convention center and looking to talk to you. Hopefully we'll have a chance to do that in person sometime soon.
I'd love to. I think we're including an Audible download in whatever thank you you're sending out to all of your employees. I personally recommend Conscious Capitalism, Ben & Jerry's, but download whatever you want, and happy to continue to be a resource. Pleasure to be seeing you, Rob, and thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.